Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Rewiring this 1959 Series 1 Alice Chalmers D17 farm tractor. So in the previous video, we kind of just got the lights mounted and a few other odds and ends stuff, and this is going to be the wrap-up video for this, so sit back and relax and make yourself comfy because we've got a long video to get through here. So as you guys can see, we're just kind of putting the dash together, and by we, I mean my brother. He knows a lot more about electrical and stuff than I do, and he has rewired the backhoe, the 8N, and this tractor. So he knows a lot more about doing this stuff than I do, and quite frankly, he's a lot more qualified than I am. So I have the side panels made, which you guys have, I think, seen in the last video. They were missing when we bought this tractor. They just weren't there. I think someone was working on this thing and they never got put back on, and they might be sitting in someone's garage somewhere. They could be in the scrap pile, or they could be melted into a new car. So I don't have any idea who had this tractor before me. Well, I know the guy that I bought it off of, but I don't know who he got it off of. So we're just, my brother's working on the dash and getting this side panel on, just kind of rerouting wires and stuff. You would not believe how many wires there are behind this dash panel that's on this tractor. It is unbelievable. I could not imagine what a vehicle, a car is like today with a giant fuse panel or fuse box and wiring everywhere. That's kind of the problem with the newer vehicles and stuff today. They're so complicated, and I don't want to say you can't work on them. You can. It's just becoming more and more difficult. And we're kind of made this tractor a little difficult to work on with the dash and stuff, but a lot of those gauges were broken, and I really wanted to see what was happening with this tractor. How's the motor? Is the oil pressure good? How's the engine temp? Are we charging? What's the RPMs? What are the RPMs at? There's just a lot of things that were not. I couldn't tell. I couldn't see how the tractor was doing while I'm, if I'm working it too hard or it needs to cool down or whatever the case may be. What we're doing here is soldering the wires, and I have another video on that of wiring the small, or soldering the small wires and the big main cables for this tractor. Now, soldering is really, after seeing this, soldering is really the best way to put connectors on the end of wires. You can crimp it and stuff. Crimping is okay. However, the problem with crimping is it's not a chemical bond to the wire itself. All it is it's just a crimp connection, and you're relying on the crimp itself to hold the wire on. So what my brother did, he really did this tractor proper and how things should be done. And I really want to thank him for doing this. He was a huge help. I could not have done this whole project without him. What we did was he put the heat shrink tubing on first, the wire. Then he put the connector on. Twisted the wires and stuff, and then put the connector on, crimped it, and then I have these real little torch ends. They're not a huge torch when you're doing this. Using a torch is really the best thing to do. This is really the best tool to use to solder wires. You can use a heat gun and whatnot, or a soldering iron. They just don't seem to work real good. They don't heat it up as quickly as a torch itself does. And all we're using is just, this is just a propane torch. My brother for the big cables, he used a map gas torch, which actually I need to buy myself one of those at some point. The cylinders themselves, I think, are like $20, so they're pretty expensive, but I guess you also get a lot more heat out of it, so, 6 of this and half a dozen of that. But after you crimp the connector on, you heat the connector up, the end of the wire, up with the torch, and you just get it hot enough that you see smoke. Once you're pushing the solder into it, you see smoke and stuff coming off, because that is the flux that is burning off. And after you fill the connector up with solder, what you do then is slide the heat shrink tubing over that, and then heat that up. You could use the torch. The torch, again, gets things too hot, and a heat gun really seemed to work a lot better, so that's exactly what we used. And my brother's putting in the fuses and stuff. This tractor has, is it 6 circuits on it? 6 or 8 maybe? Something like that. There'd be a circuit for either 3 sets of lights, one fuse for the front lights, one for the middle, one for the rear, maybe something like that. I'm not entirely sure exactly how he wired this tractor up, but at the end of this video, you guys will get to see this tractor start up, and we did have a few problems, sort of minor, nothing super major, but it does run, so we're happy about that. But the lights and stuff are on, and the fuse panel is mounted. I have, like I said, I have those side panels cut and drilled and stuff. And I'm trying to think, what else are we doing? Oh, he's flipping the coil around now. Apparently, this tractor, when it was positive ground, if I remember correctly, out of the Alice Chalmers factory. That's what it was in West Alice, Wisconsin, which is where this tractor was made at. It was a positive ground, and we are turning it into a negative ground tractor, so you have to turn the coil 180 degrees. So, just take the two ends and just flip it. Just flip the coil around, and you shouldn't have to mess with the distributor. At least we didn't. We didn't mess with it, and it seemed to run fine and whatnot. So that was done. He added in the hour meter cable, and apparently, unbeknownst to my brother and I, they had sent us this would be a gauge cluster kit that went on a diesel D17. So this is a gas tractor. You can see the distributor and the spark plugs and stuff there. So the diesel motors obviously spin a lot slower than a gasoline motor does, and the problem is at an idle for this tractor, it's like the diesel one being pegged wide open, and you would put, I put a substantial amount more hours on this tractor because of that, and I'm really not exactly happy about that, but it's alright, I guess. We have an actual hour meter in this thing, a digital one, and we can see how many hours and stuff we've put on it during the course of the year and when we mow the field or whatever the case may be. So that is kind of a bummer, and the fuel gauge is for a diesel one. Apparently that was an electronic fuel gauge, and this one just is a regular old, I guess it has a cork or something in it. And all that green stuff that you see come out, that was coolant. My brother put in the new thermostat in the block of this tractor, and unbeknownst to him and I, apparently this tractor has been overheated from what we could tell. It still runs and stuff just fine, but the thermostat was like melted into the block itself, and my brother Christian had a really horrible time trying to get this thing back in. we decided not to drain the whole cooling system, which was maybe a good or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. So you had to really real quick pull the old one out and then put the new one in. And he lost a little bit of coolant, and we tried to soak it up. At the end of the day that we were doing this, I brought over some sawdust, and I used the sawdust to soak up any of the extra coolant and stuff that was in there, so we wouldn't have any problems or stuff with it. But like I said, we're kind of alternating back and forth between the two torches. The yellow one is the MAP gas, and the green one is the propane. And like I said, you would not believe how many wires there are in underneath this dash. It's a whole spaghetti bowl of wires. Now, I'll tell you guys some more about this tractor for maintenance and stuff that we've done. When we bought this thing, the air cleaner was not hooked up, which was not a good thing. I didn't like to see that. I don't know why. Some people just don't run the tractor with an air filter. Why would you not? So I put that on, and then I had to add 3 gallons of gear oil to the rear end of this tractor because it was low. And then, now that was whenever I bought it. And just recently, I pulled both plugs for draining the oil in this thing, and I had to buy 10 gallons of gear oil to put in the transmission and rear end of this tractor. I think this thing took around 7 gallons, somewhere around there. And there doesn't seem to be any leaks or anything on, leaking from the brake drums or, whatever, wherever it would leak at. There really doesn't seem to be any leaks, and I am really happy I changed the fluid. The fluid that was in the transmission was pretty much, it had a pretty high moisture content to it, and I really wanted to change that. I probably shouldn't have waited as long as I did, but that's just kind of the way things go. That gear oil set me back about $100 for 10 gallons of gear oil, and that's kind of one of the downsides to having a big farm tractor like this. The oil changes and stuff are not cheap. That white filter that is on the side of the motor, we're still running the original engine oil that we bought the tractor with. I try to change the engine oil and change the fluids and stuff in the equipment that we buy, because we don't know what the previous people, what they ran in it, or if there was moisture or something or water that had gotten itself down into the transmission. And it's really a good thing to change all the fluids if you can. The engine oil, when we got it, looked really clean, like he had literally just changed the engine oil in it, and we decided just to kind of run this for a bit. We don't put very many hours on this tractor in the course of a year, but when you need it, and it really comes in quite handy. But like I said, we're running the original engine oil, and the white filter that is on the side of the engine, that was like 20 or 22 bucks for an oil filter for this tractor, which I thought was kind of a lot of money, but hey, I guess it is what it is, right? I also changed the gear oil in the final drives of this tractor also. So we're kind of changing a lot of the oils and stuff in this thing. There's still another compartment for hydraulic fluid, and there's the power steering fluid, plus the coolant and the engine oil that still kind of needs done. The coolant still looks really good, so I probably won't change that. Previously, this would be probably a year or two ago maybe, I pulled off these tires off the rear of this tractor, and they were leaking. The tubes inside of the tires were leaking, and they were filled with calcium. And I did not want to have calcium leaking out of this tractor everywhere. It was kind of making a real bad mess of the rims. They were really getting quite rusty, and I didn't want them to, rust through in any places, so I decided to pull all that out. And then I also bought new tubes and replaced the calcium with, I use windshield washer fluid. There's 117 gallons, 106 gallons of windshield washer fluid in the tires of the back of the rear tires of this tractor, and it helps to keep the tractor planted on the ground, if you're on a side hill or something, and it also helps to give you a lot more traction. So I have roughly 800 pounds, I think I figured out about 400 pounds in each tire. So, that's a lot of extra weight, and that'll definitely help out a lot. And when we bought this tractor, we also put on 2 new front tires. So 2 new front tires and tubes, new tubes in the rear with windshield washer fluid, change the oil and stuff. So we're really giving this tractor a lot of maintenance that has been overdue, and I'm really happy we're doing this. This machine seems to be a really well-made piece of equipment, and it's built like a tank. You really can't hurt the thing. Also, you see us using a table there. That is my welding table from Harbor Freight. I never expected to use this table for so many different things, from welding to plasma cutting on to using it as a workbench, using it to hold our tools and stuff here. I've used it for a miter saw stand whenever I didn't want to bring out the big stand itself that it sits on. So this welding table is really a great thing to have. It folds up and everything and collapses, and it is so handy to have a table right here to put all our tools and stuff on, so we're not putting them on the ground or on the tractor somewhere. But he is doing those big cables, just soldering them and heat shrinking the tubing and stuff. But like I said, soldering these things, it definitely did take some more time. Soldering is just one of those things. It's just a much better way to do the connectors, and it's a much more solid connector. That's really, we shouldn't have any problems with any of the connectors on this tractor from here on out. I wouldn't say forever, but it's not likely that we'd have a problem with them. Now I've got to say, it wasn't really that warm the day that we were doing this. You can see my brother's in a heavy coat, and I've got a few more pounds on me than he does, and I'm just out there in a hoodie. He's using the hydraulic crimper now. He's probably doing the battery cables. That would be my guess. The other ends of the battery cable, something like that. And having that hydraulic crimper is a really big help. It really makes a proper crimp on it, and then soldering it, and it really just makes things a lot better. Now we're making sure we're also getting a good ground on this tractor. I think he ground down a spot where we decided, we also moved the ground bolt for this tractor to another spot on it, just to make things easier. And at some point I will also probably buy a new battery for this tractor. We have a Napa deep cycle marine battery in this thing, and the deep cycle marine batteries are really not meant for starting an engine. They are just kind of meant for running a trolling motor or something. And I mean, you can start engines and stuff with them, they'll be fine for that, but for this tractor I would rather have a proper battery in it and put the deep cycle marine in something else, or use it for the winch on the Jeep trailer. But this Napa battery, it seems to work and start this tractor fine. It doesn't fit in the tray, which bothers me a little bit. It almost hits the motor, or hits the head of the motor, and it kind of sits in the tray, the battery tray, crooked. So maybe at some point when that battery goes out, I will probably just upgrade to a regular battery up at Battery Warehouse or Napa or someplace like that. But what I'm doing here is I'm kind of zip tying these wires up on the rear fenders of this tractor. This was really the only way that we could kind of route the wires in this thing without making it look too bad, too terrible looking. And I'm also using Never Sees in this tractor for the bolts and stuff. The dash bolts that we took out originally, I don't know when the last time they were turned. This tractor is a 59, so that would put this tractor, is that 60 years ago? Yeah, 60 years old, and I don't know when the last time those bolts were turned, and we snapped off every one of them. So if those bolts had Never Sees on them, I think they would be a lot less likely to snap off. And unfortunately, I had to drill and tap the new bolts for that, so that's just the way things go, I guess. But now, unfortunately, the lighting that I got shipped in for this tractor, the bulbs were burned out right from the get-go, and it was the same day that the eBay 30-day return policy was up, and I had like 4 hours left to do anything about these, so I immediately messaged the seller, and I asked him if he could send me 2 new ones. 2 out of the 6 were not working, and he was nice enough to send me 2 new ones that worked just fine, and I was really pleased with that. Now I'm just kind of sitting on the tractor here, kind of getting used to the new gauges and stuff, familiarizing myself with the tractor here and the new gauges that were in there. We took off the traction booster gauge and replaced it with an hour meter gauge. The traction booster we don't use on this tractor, so it's really not relevant for what we need, and all I need is just the 3-point to go up and down. I don't need any traction boost or anything. Like I said, I'm not doing any heavy tillage with this tractor. This is probably going to pull stuck tractors out and pull some logs and probably mow the field, and that's probably pretty much it. I really can't think of anything else that we do with this tractor. I don't know, maybe drag something really heavy. I have no idea. But this tractor on good ground, on a road or on gravel, you wouldn't believe how much this tractor could pull. My brother had got his service truck stuck in down by the shop, and it was kind of a low spot to begin with, and it's been so wet around here. We have had, let me think here, we've had half again as much rain last year as we did the whole year. So like we are at half again as much rain, half again extra rain for the whole year. So he had gotten the truck stuck, and we just kind of tied, I wouldn't say all of my chains together, but we had a lot of the chains hooked to his truck. And this tractor, he has an 89 F350 with an IH IDI. It's a 7.3, and he also has probably a 2,000 or 2 to 3,000 pound service body on the back, plus the truck itself. And he was wondering, if this tractor could pull that thing out of the hole. And I was really surprised. This machine did spin tires a little bit pulling it out, and it did get it up to the top surprisingly. So I was pretty happy about that. Seeing that this tractor could pull anywheres from 3, 4, 5. It's probably 6 to 9,000 pounds, something like that. Now, granted, that is on wheels, but we were pulling it up out of a sort of a hole. So, but yeah, I'll tell you, this is a good old machine. I'm really happy we bought this thing now. For Christmas, my brother had gotten me he got me 3 manuals for this tractor, and I was just kind of flipping through it. And apparently Allis-Chalmers used either 3 or 4 compression rings for this tractor instead of 1 or 2 of them. So, this tractor, the top end of this machine seems to be in pretty good condition. There doesn't seem to be any blow-by or anything, and the bottom end has good oil pressure. So this tractor it seems to be a pretty healthy machine. The only thing that I could think of that would go bad is a gear in the transmission, or a clutch would go out, and I think that's probably pretty much it. It could stand to have new rear tires, but at $300 or $400 a pop, $800 in tires, I'm just not going to do. Well, we have pretty much all of the wiring and stuff in. The lights are all in. 2 out of the 6 lights do not work, and we are at the 1-month period for the return, and the seller doesn't accept return, so that's kind of a bummer there. But we have this stuff here will need tightened, but we're just going to fire it up for now. And there is a huge mess of wires up in there, and
which every joint had been soldered.
Yeah, every joint's been soldered, and there's all the new gauges, and they're all lit. And this is our indicator light for the alternator to put a little draw on the battery, I guess, and then it'll make the alternator turn on. So the battery is hooked up. We also have the new alternator in place, and I don't think that'll go anywhere. I don't really trust those welds. I was trying to weld way too thick a steel with a welder, with my Harbor Freight welder. So fuel's on, battery disconnect on, clutch in. You have it in neutral. And let me make sure one last time. I don't think we have anything in here. Did you tighten that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll fire this thing up for the first time since we've had it, since we've been working on it. So the moment we all have been waiting for. Clutch, push in on the choke to choke it. So I had to bend this piece of steel here, this one here, and to get this alternator in. And I think it's not going to hit anything now. I'd actually really just like to take that whole piece of steel out, but you want to try it again? Good thing it didn't start there.
Yeah.
Choke out, pull the choke out. Alright, sweet, that sounds a lot better. So, the verdict is horrible. How much oil pressure do we have? Oh, no way! Are we charging? No. Turn it off. Shut it off.
That's probably cool.
Yeah, something's smoking up there. Yeah, I bet that's all that is. Oh yeah, don't breathe that. I don't know what. Yeah, that's coolant. Well, I guess it'll just burn off. I don't go near that. that manifold will be hot, or exhaust manifold. I don't think it'll hurt anything.
No, that's just the coolant I spilled.
Oh, you want to fire it up again?
Yeah.
I like to see that we're charging. Well, it's nothing electrical, so I guess that's good. Nah, maybe. Pull the choke out. There you go. Yeah, you have to give it throttle too. Well, I'm glad to see we're in the normal for oil pressure. That's really good. Oh, and that's at almost an idle. So I'll get you guys a close-up of the gauges here. So water temp, voltage, oil pressure, these are the lights, power meter, as well as the engine RPM. That was the original power meter. We put in this nice digital one that should work every time. On the 850, this one broke, this gauge here. This one doesn't work anymore, so well, I'm pretty pleased about that. Why aren't we charging though? We should be up near 14. It just went down. This tractor has a lot of life left in it. So we are now charging. We're at like the highest, what'd you see, a 13 and a half? 13.3. So we're charging there, normal oil pressure, the hour meter moved, this is working. Now we just need the water temp to work. And 2 more lights. So now I think we're just kind of buttoning everything up. I will have, I forgot that this previous part was in here. I will probably add in the, put it up another video of us driving this thing around a bit, and you guys can see that. But I'm just putting these side panels on, and my brother is, looks like we're putting on the panels for the hood. And I also did some work to the exhaust muffler on this tractor. Also, I put some exhaust cement, and I don't think I did film it, but I lost the footage, so that's kind of a bummer there. But like I said, I'm never seizing all of the bolts, and really just making this thing, try to make it last for a while and make the bolts all come out real easily. So you wouldn't believe how long it took me to make those panels. That is not the exact panel that was in there. The original ones went to the left a lot more, so that's just the way things go. That was about the easiest that I could make it. So, well, there you go. That's wiring up the tractor here, and I hope everyone enjoyed this video. And if you would, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And we'll see you all in the next one.